So this is a special event. It's a demonstration of the Intermedia Hypertext system, which was programmed in the 1980s at Brown University. And Norman was the person in charge, cooperating at that time, and as well as today, basically, with Andy van Dam, who served as last year's ACM Hypertext 2019 keynote speaker at HOF. Norm has been involved in research and commercialization of hypertext and multimedia for more than 40 years. In the industry, he oversaw products such as Macromedia Flash, Dreamweaver, Director Shockwave. And in academia, he led the, as mentioned, Intermedia project, a late 1980s comprehensive project that demonstrated numerous hypertext features that have been lost and forgotten since the advent of the web. Norm gave a keynote at Hypertext 1989, which was one of the first ACM Hypertext conferences. Today, it is my honor to welcome Norman for his presentation and demonstration of the Intermedia Hypertext system. In fact, referring to Hypermedia, Norman published a paper more than 30 years ago, also in 1989, with the challenging title, "The Missing Link: Why we all are doing hypertext wrong." And I'm curious to see this system live, which I only know by publications and screenshots. So let's be inspired by aspects of it, which may help to improve our systems today. So Norman, the floor is yours. Thanks for being with us.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. If you're looking for me in the Zoom mosaic, I'm the one with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background, because I'm in San Francisco. If people wouldn't mind, if you turn on your cameras, I can see if you're laughing at my jokes or not. And today we're going to do some time travel. We're going to look at hypertext system circa 89. And it's a little bit of a back to the future, because you will see that many of the things that we've been talking about today in the context of the web were issues before the web actually existed. So if we move ahead, this slide actually serves for two things. Right over here is me, circa 1989, but Daniel was talking about the Dexter group that created the model, and this is Doug Engelbart, who we all know, Frank Halas from Note Cards, Amy Pearl from Sun, Bob Axon from KMS, Steve Feiner from Brown. This is Mayer and Frank who did that, John Leggett, Tim Oren, and Randy Trigg. So there is a little history, so you can see that I had more hair, and you can see the Dexter group. This is what a cell phone looked like in 1989. So it came in a bag, and it had a separate unit for dialing and then a separate handset. So we're kind of setting the stage for the context of the system you're going to see. What you're actually going to see is a real 31-year-old Macintosh 2CI. It had 8 megabytes of memory, so that's 2,000 times less than you have today. The processor speed was 30,000 times less than it is today. The disk was 12,000 times less than today. The network was 1,000 times less than today, and the screen resolution was 12x today. So you're going to see Intermedia running on a Mac 2CI through a VGA adapter going into a video capture device going into my USB port being broadcast over Zoom. So you won't see that every day. Intermedia was a project at Brown that we used for education, and our metaphors were important. The paradigm was linking should be as easy as copy and paste. We said linking should be embedded in all apps. There shouldn't be a separate hypertext system. Linking should be an action that everybody can do, whether they're a reader or an author. no difference between a reader and author, and a multi-user network that multiple people can work on this at the same time. The architecture quickly was a multi-user network. It had a document network file system. This is the intermediate process with different applications. There was a socket to a link server with a link database. So the features I'm going to show you are how hypertext looks in a desktop metaphor, multiple apps, the notion of webs, which I'll explain, the use of history and local maps, copy and paste. I'm going to show generalized anchors and live tracking, and for trivia folks, this is where the name anchor came from in HTML today. I mean, Tim Berners-Lee had seen our system, and we had generalized the notion of what used to be called spans in text to be anchors, because our notion was that not only text is part of hypertext, but you needed to have an anchor for graphics or temporal media. We're going to show bidirectional links and one-to-many links, some user access rights, linking on and annotation on read-only documents, some multimedia, and some templates. So with that, let's switch to a demo, and let's see if I can. So is everybody seeing Intermedia? Yeah, okay. And let's see, is everybody laughing at my jokes? I can't tell. So let's begin. Here we have what looks like a regular desktop system, and I'm going to show you all the different apps that we have. We have a video app, Play is an animation app. Here we can start a new folder. This is a Val is a timeline app. This is a drawing app. That is a Word app. And you can see they're just regular text editors with style sheets, and a drawing editor where I can draw things. So it just looks like a regular desktop now. So now I am going to go to one of the corpuses that were created in Intermedia. Now, either that or I can actually do my Hypertext 89 talk if you want, but because this is the actual bits from that. But I won't do that. I'm going to show you NASA, and I'm going to open up this thing called a web. Now, a web is our answer to one of the questions that was asked recently. How do you deal with a zillion anchors all pointing to the same document? How do you manage it if you have Shakespeare, for example? There'll be a million links pointing to it, and you'd never be able to see what things are. So the web is a way to partition links over the same set of documents. So if you had a Shakespeare corpus of Shakespeare sonnets, one class could have one web where they're creating their set of links pointing to Shakespeare and pointing back because it's bidirectional. Another class could have another set of links. Another class could have another set of links. If you use hypothesis, which Daniel talked about, then they have the notion of groups, which is the closest thing that we have today. So the web view is opened up, and the web view is both a history, and as we'll see in a second, it's also a map. So I'm going to open up, oops, wrong. The problem is I have two mice. I have a current mouse and a 31-year-old mouse, and sometimes I hit the wrong one. So here's the space overview document. It's a graphics document, and these little markers right here are link markers. So if I want to follow to Beyond Earth, I follow. And I now go to this anchor. Notice the anchor is shown in marching ants on this marquee selection. And as I said, links are bidirectional, so I just follow that there, and I go back to the graphics document with that anchor highlighted. If I open up the link for the space shuttle, that opens up, and notice that as that opens up, this map over here changes, and I have a history of the previous documents that I just looked at, and I also show the different links that are emanating out of this document, and as I touch on a different link, you'll see they highlight. This one is just a single link. This one is just a single link. Some of them are multiple links, like that one has 2 links. So I'm going to go and let's look at the NASA facilities. And again, now here's a link that has more than one destination. So this is a n-ary link, and we bring up, here's the source documents facilities, and here's the 2 different things. I'm going to bring up the media guide, and here is a text document that will come up, and it has lots of links. So as you can see, again, this was the anchor, and lots of links. And again, as I touch here, I'll see the links. I want to add, the thing I didn't show, so I'll show that now, is this is how easy it is to create a link. I just select something and say start link. Just like I say copy, I select something here and say complete link, and all of a sudden I have a link, and it's bidirectional. That's all I had to do. So the reason we did this paradigm, start link and complete link, is it means that I can just say start link over here, and then just browse around till I find the document that I want, and I'm not in a mode, and then I can create that link. So we don't want to be in a mode creating links. Now, we also can, these documents are live, so I can edit them. And so, oops, let's see, wrong keyboard. I'll just type in HUMAN’20 here, and I will create a link from their start link, and I'll come over here, and I will link to John Aaron and say complete link, and now I have created a link between HUMAN’20, and again, I'll just do this for a second. Notice that when I follow a link, it will scroll to where I was. So just have to, oh, come on. Oh, come on. I'm sorry. The Zoom is trying to take up my whole screen with your pictures. Okay, so we're back here, and excuse me one more second. Zoom is not cooperating. Okay, so we're back here to HUMAN’20, and now if I want to just add something in between HUMAN’20, I just add December 4th, and the system is smart enough to know that we've extended the anchor. So now the anchor is highlighted here, and you see that it's extended. If we want to create, if we want to delete a bunch of stuff, it's smart enough to know that the anchor is now a single character. So we're keeping track of all of this while we're editing. So we saw the map, and so now let's try to see some other stuff. I'm going to go back to the Space Shuttle overview. And we're going to look at some, let's see, excuse me, facilities. And let's see, we go to, oh, excuse me, sorry. I'll go over here to Space Shuttle Overview, and now I want to go to the Johnson Space Shuttle, this Johnson Space Center. So I go over here and I bring up a document on the Johnson Space Center. There's my anchor. I'm going to follow the link from there, and I'm going to bring up now a photograph. So here's a photograph. There's my incoming link. I'm going to go to the next photograph. So this looks like I'm looking at a read-only picture, but really I'm not. If I show the top palette, this is a full graphics editor. And so I can do whatever I want. I can draw a orange rectangle. I can draw a red rounded rectangle, and I can draw a circle around that. Now, if I want to create an anchor, I select what I want to be the anchor. So I select this object, and I select this object, and I select this object, and I say start link, and now I will just select something here and say complete link, and there we go. When we follow in, those anchors are highlighted. It can move things around. So I'll move that down here, and I'll move this down here. Unlike text, graphics isn't, the objects don't, the link marker doesn't track with the objects because you don't know which object you'd like to have the link marker on. So I'll bring this here, I'll go back here, and now when I follow the link, it highlights those graphics objects in those new areas. So if I now I'm going to do something kind of crazy. Well, it isn't crazy, but it's fun. I'm going to go back to oh, actually, I can use my map. I'm going to go back to the press document, the media guide. So I go back to my history. And now what I'm going to do is close this web. So what happens when I close the web? All of the links go away. So there we go, all the links go away. Well, now I'm going to go and create a new web, and I can now create a link in here. And I'll link over here. And now I have a new set of links in a different web. It's the same set of documents on the same file system, but now I have a new web. If I close that and reopen that old web, then you'll see all those links come back. So here we go. That old web is opening up, and I'm sorry this takes a little long. Remember, the CPU is 30,000 times slower, but you notice that the system isn't 30,000 times faster. One of the reasons is that every time the mouse moves a pixel, we do not call 27 ad servers that take up time to fill up a page. So here you can see that this got repopulated, and the old web still works. So right now I was running with pretty high privileges, and remember this is working over a network. So I'm going to close down for a second, and then I'm going to start up again as a user with fewer privileges. So in the meantime, why don't you ask some questions if you'd like, and then I'll resume the second half as soon as this launches. Anyone have any questions?
I think for those who have questions, you can just ask them. Would be nice.
Yeah, just yell. Oh, that phone was probably, the bag was probably 11 inches by 8 inches. So, oh, it's about the size of a sheet of, yeah, the American sheet of paper or an A4 sheet of paper. So it was pretty, it's kind of crazy. Well, a little bit of both, but we're teaching a course called "The Web Was Not the Beginning and the Web is Not the End," and the major point is what I say is systems are of their time, and sometimes you have ideas that are not ready to go out there because of the technology. It's just not there enough. Remember, when this came before Tim Berners-Lee, and Tim Berners-Lee knew about this, and he came to my tutorial at ECH Team 90. So he knew all this. And also, if you've seen the first web browser, it looked like this. It had a full editor in it, and you could edit whatever you wanted, and you create links at the same time. So he knew about this stuff. But then later on, it was too hard for Netscape to deal with, so they got rid of that. Mark Andreessen got rid of the editing part, and so the web went from being something like this, where the reader and author were one and the same, to a publication mechanism where very few people created hypertext, and most people were just passive recipients or at most link followers. So to answer that question, Tim probably made the right choices at that time, because people don't forget, well, how many people were sentient beings in 1989? People can't raise their hands, but there are a bunch of people here who were negative some odd years old in 1989, so they don't remember. The modem speed was not a gigabit per second that you might have. It was 1,000 characters a second or 3,000 characters a second. So, and you couldn't assure that a web server was up. The web servers all ran on local machines. If you shut your laptop down, your web server wasn't up anymore. So to maintain, some of the early stuff that Tim writes is about Intermedia and says it's cool to have this linked database, and I'd really like to have it, but we can't expect the machines to be up, so we can't keep track of bidirectional links. Now, 30 years later, things are totally different, and the charge that we give to our students, we're teaching this course because the web doesn't have to be the web of 30 years ago. If our students and other students understand all this stuff, they can now make the web into something better. So we don't care if this research now helps 30 years later, as long as someday we get something like this. And the work that Daniel and the Daniels and Klaus are doing, we're doing a little bit of that stuff as well. And you don't want to just link web pages. If you think about the Google document suite or the Microsoft Office web stuff, if somebody could put the linking, the bidirectional linking, authoring and linking being one and the same in those, you would have pretty much what Intermedia is pretty easily. So that's something that I want to look at doing, or work with Klaus and the Hypothesis folks and others to try to get that, because that would be pretty cool.
Yes.
Let me go here. This was used for a course on Charles Dickens. And so let me open up the Dickens web, and then I'll open up the overview. So here's the overview, and I will go to the biography folder, and I will go here to the essay on his popularity. And notice if I try to type here, I get something that says I don't have the privileges. So, and it says once you start typing there, you don't have the privileges. It says, okay, this is a new document. So if you ever do something with it, you have to save it under another name. Now, if I come here and go to biography and open that again, so I haven't actually written anything to that document, I can now say start link, and I'll come down here and link here. Oops, I moved that, so I will undo that. Come down here and I messed up because I actually wrote this document. So let me open that again, because I changed that from a read-only to a read-write, or to something that was being edited. But I did start link on a read-only document, and now I will do complete link on a read-only document. And so now I have created a link on a document that I didn't have write access to. So we allow that. Now, here I'm going to show, and the way that works is we have all these different we have a user property, we have document properties that provide annotate access as well as read and write access. We have properties on anchors and links, so we can add explainers, tags. That's the stuff that will show up in those boxes that you saw. Now here's something that we have that's pretty fun, at least in my mind. Okay, imagine you're a teacher teaching English literature and you want to talk about 100 authors. If you had to create one of these documents for every author and create all of those links, that would be a lot of labor. So if I, instead, I can do something like this. I will come here and show you templates. Now I will come here and I'll open up the author's web. Oops, I can only have one web open at a time. So I'll close this Dickens web. And now I'll open the author's web. And if you look at what we just saw with Dickens, the schematic was, I have this thing over here which is specific about the particular author. Here's the author overview and their works and the biography and so forth. And then the links that were at the bottom were stuff that are outside documents. They weren't about an individual author. They were about a just a topic that all the authors linked to. So if I wanted to create if I had one on Dickens and I wanted to create one on Alexander Pope, I would love to just be able to duplicate this. I get separate documents from Pope, but they all link to these same documents. So I can simply create this template, which is like a folder, but it has placeholders. If you see this dash, this underscore right there, it has placeholders. And so if I want to create a another set of documents for that famous writer Norm Meyrowitz, I just say duplicate template. I type in Meyrowitz, and in a second you will see all these new documents being populated. So there's my biography, there's my literary relations, the names now say Meyrowitz Literary Relations. You'll see the here's my overview, here are my works, and as you see, all the links populated, and here's the web, so you can see that in the web view, all of my links are set, so if I go to my biography, it will go to a linked template document with my biography, but if I go to themes, it will go to the general document that all of the folks link to. So I will now go to one more or two more sets of items, but it'll be pretty quick. Here you can see that themes link not only to Meyrowitz, but it linked to all the other stuff. I will go to, and tell me how I'm doing on time, Klaus.
It's perfectly fine.
Okay. I will go to the course that was taught on biology, and this is about cell motility. So I'll open up the cell motility web, and I will go to cilia, and I'll go to the cilia overview, and now I'll go to the function overview, and here we are, and I'm going to scroll down here, and so here it says hence the cilia bends, so I'll follow that link, and now I think I will go to a video document. Now here's a video document, and we saw textual anchors, we saw graphical anchors. This is a temporal anchor, and so we're linking to the beginning frame and the end frame. Now, the reason you're not seeing video on the screen is because you couldn't do video on the screen back then. The systems were too slow. So you actually used a video disc, which was like a Blu-ray disc, but analog rather than digital, and it ran on a separate machine. And when we hit play on each of these anchors, it would run the video disc at those frames and show it on a television. And if you wanted to create a new frame, you just played the video, and you did a punch in for the start that you wanted, a punch out for the end that you wanted, and you would get a new statement here, and that was already anchored, so that when you followed, the appropriate video played. We also had an animation editor, and as we go here, we'll see that we bring up an animation editor. This is a bitmap keyframe animation editor, so it takes a little while to load the bitmaps, but as you'll see, we have linked to an animation editor that does that, and our anchors there again are temporal, so we can link to a single frame, or we can link to a span of frames that start and end, and so forth. So I will do, let me stop this guy, and I will show you one more thing, and then give you some time to ask questions or to ask me to show different parts of the system. So I will close this down, and show you annotations. So if I just bring up this document right here, and we had annotations, and not only did we have these navigational links, but we had annotation links. So I could go here and say, create an annotation, and we came up with an annotation that let's see, there we go. Let me move this over. So we created an annotation from Bernhahn to right here, and Bernhahn wasn't alive in 1960, so I want to change that to Doug Engelbart. I can write a comment down here. Bern wasn't alive. So there's my annotation. These are bidirectional, and so forth. And I had this notion of push-pull. So if I go here to this anchor and I say push, it will put that, oh, I don't have right privileges, but it'll actually, it changed it to Doug Engelbart right here. So the annotations could push and pull, just using the link mechanism the same way stuff does in sort of in Google Docs today. So I asked for 45 hours, but Klaus only gave me 45 minutes, so I can't show you other stuff. But let's open to questions, or if you want me to try different things in the system, just yell and ask.
Thank you very much, Norman. So we are open for questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for this demo. It's like stepping back in time. Wonderful history at work here, and the future as well, and hopefully will come to pass. I'm curious about user testing. How much, if any, was this put in front of non-expert users, and what kinds of things in those early days did you learn from user testing that prompted maybe changes in the design aspects of the interface and usability type concerns?
At first we had a global map, and people didn't, it was just too much of a visual cacophony of stuff, so we went to a local map, which helped people visualize better. But pretty much everything that you've seen was created by various courses. It was used for a biology course, or a bunch of biology courses. It was used for a bunch of English courses. It was used for geology courses. It was used at other universities. It was used by a medical school, I can't remember where, for training for doctors for certain subjects. So one of the things with user testing is George Landau, who did the English corpus. He really wanted the NRE links, because he said, well, whenever you touch something like Doug Engelbart, for example, you don't want to have, if you look at the web and you look at Wikipedia, sometimes if you want to have a bunch of references on Doug Engelbart, you have a bunch of footnotes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it looks terrible and you don't know which one is what. Whereas here, if I clicked on a link, he could label all of the places, like as you saw, here's the animation, here's the video, here's something else. So he thought that was important, and when Intermedia stopped being developed, he moved to Story Space, and they didn't have those links, so he ended up having to create these intermediate documents that simulated the multiple links, and it was a big pain. So that's one of the things we learned. But the students, we did user testing. In fact, we had a whole part of IRIS, our institute, which were anthropologists, and they did ethnographic studies of people using this. And the students really liked it, and they created much more content than they would have if they were writing papers. and they were more, because it didn't seem like it was a test, or a paper is something that is a big monolith that is going to be judged. They thought this allowed them to express themselves much more, so they wrote a lot more, and they annotated each other's stuff. And somebody created a hypertext thesis, the first hypertext thesis. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it does. Extensive user testing and usage is, I think, the answer. That's great. Thank you.
Next, and please, if you want me to demo something on the system, feel free to ask.
Norm?
Yes.
Thanks for a wonderful demo. I don't think I missed it. Obviously, I could copy a web, so I could basically take my bush-type trails and give them to somebody else. Can I, assuming I have the source and destination documents, would I have been able to move individual links between different webs? So if student A wanted to give a useful link to student B, would that be possible?
We didn't allow that. We didn't have time. We wanted to do that, and we wanted to be able to have multiple webs open at the same time, so you could potentially impose two different classes webs at the same time. But that has some user interface things. When you create a link, at that point, where does the link go? Is the anchor in web 1 or is the anchor in web 2? So we thought that would be too confusing, and so we didn't do it. We thought about it, but we did. One of the things oops, wrong mouse. What we did do is, I believe, let's see, if I copy this and paste it here, I get a copy of the link. So we did have that, so we were ready to do that, but we didn't understand the semantics.
Oh, that's really neat. Thanks.
I'll answer the second one first. If you make them do it, then they will. So, and we, in our class, we used Hypothesis this year to have people annotate Bush's paper and Nelson's stuff, and my papers, and they like doing it. And part of it, it was straightforward. It was pretty much like Intermedia. You said, here's a selection, create an annotation, write some stuff. And so they got used to it. Once they did it, and you get them to do it once, and they're timid and they're worried, then they see that the classmates don't, by and large, troll them. They actually write nice or interesting comments back, then they're not reluctant. In terms of the organization, you would have thought, that maybe people didn't understand this, but George actually took this corpus, the English corpus that you saw, moved it to story space, and then when the web came about, moved it to the web and created the Victorian web, starting with what you just saw in Intermedia, and then it caught on, and there are now 100,000 documents done by thousands of scholars across the world in the Victorian web. So I apparently somebody understood it. I don't know the details, but they figured it out.
maybe
more questions or more demo?
I have a quick question, Norman. The most compelling thing I find in Intermedia is the ease of creating links. So it's really like copy pasting, and we had this one article in 89, why we all do hypertext wrong, and simply it was there is no mechanism for that to easily create links. Why do you think this took so long and still has not arrived basically for people to create arbitrary links? So what is the problem that people do not demand this feature in our systems?
Well, it's kind of an interesting paradox that I believe, Tim Berners-Lee's biggest contribution, or at least what has caught on, isn't necessarily the links per se, but it's the addressing scheme of the URLs, which meant that by just knowing a domain name, which everybody already had, and concatenating some stuff to that domain name, you could get to any machine in the world. And initially, it went to a web server, and the stuff at the end of the URL was just file system names, and it would return a document. So the URLs, it was great because now you could put stuff on a billboard and the links had a destination, but it became such that links were never now seen as part of a document. It was just seen as the whole document. And so you had links from part of a document that you had to create. Now that there wasn't an editor on the web, you had to create using the anchor tag and href in HTML, and then you link to a whole document. And the only way you could link to the whole document wasn't by bringing that document up, it was by typing in its address. So that was one of the reasons that A, you didn't have an editor, and B, you couldn't do that. These days, there's a new feature that just came out a few months ago. If you've ever noticed now when you follow links, sometimes it'll scroll down and highlight something in yellow at the end of a URL, and I don't know who came up with this syntax, but I would like to meet them in a dark alley somewhere. It is at the end of a URL, if you say colon, tilde, colon, text equals something, then you're actually creating a link to that piece of text in a document. So you could actually link to something on page 20, link to a span of text, and there's actually parameters there, so you can say, here's what I want to link to, and here's some text preceding it, and here's some text at the end of it. So now I have a unique search string that I can search to, and I can follow that link. And that's how actually Hypothesis works. It's what I call fuzzy links, where Hypothesis, the algorithm is, when I create a annotation, a link in a web page in Hypothesis, it captures a pointer, an XPath to the part of the DOM where that text is, and offsets in that DOM piece. If there is no DOM it can glom onto, it tries to keep track of. It actually strips out all of the HTML and just has a linear list of the text and then links to that. And if that doesn't work, it does a fuzzy search and it sees what's in the anchor, it stores the text that was in the anchor, and it does a search through the whole document. So that's how that stuff is being done, but it took 30 years for that type of anchor to be there, and it's only the destination that you can do that with. It's still not bidirectional. So why did it take so long? Because, well, not only that, but the web now, it's hardly documents anymore. A URL now is typically just, it's an address that goes to a web server that just passes it on to some engine that is using JavaScript to generate something on the fly that gets sent back. And the web now is just one big layout renderer. It's not very much of a document system anymore. It's just a renderer of graphics. And the closest thing to what Tim wanted, as I said before, for the web to be is actually the Google Docs or the Microsoft Office on the web. So as I said, hopefully it would come, we can get that stuff to come back in those types of systems, because the web is no longer a hypertext system. It's an operating system with HTML and JavaScript as the graphics language, not as a hypertext system.
I see another question on the chat. What development environment did you use to develop Intermedia?
Intermedia was developed using AUX, which was Apple's version of Unix back in the late 1980s. Universities pushed them to do that, and so you could run the Macintosh toolbox and use all the facilities of Unix. So our network used the network file system, the Sun network file system, and it used TCP/IP sockets. In fact, I can actually hook up a network card on this machine and FTP between that and my laptop. So the protocol still works 31 years later. They killed this, and it really is too bad, because it took until Steve Jobs came back and they incorporated the next Unix system, Mach, into the Mac toolbox. So they essentially rebuilt this, rebuilt AUX 10 years later, and Mac OS X, today is pretty much what this was in 1989.